Hi, my name is Shukri Wrights. I am a national syndicated sports radio host for Pacifica Radio Network and Boston sports radio personality for 91.5 FM WMFO and 100.1 FM WBRS. Today, I'm here to talk about how to be a better advocate for women athletes. Let's start with being more supportive. Support them financially, emotionally, which is even more importantly, because in an age where mental health has never been more important, it is important that we listen to the needs of women athletes. If they need better equipment and better facilities to train in, provide that just as eagerly as we would for their male counterparts. And secondly, another way to be a better advocate for women athletes is to show up, physically show up and support them, cheer them on, just like we would show up to root for our favorite teams. For our favorite male athletes, women athletes deserve the same treatment as well. And let's start the journey together of being a better advocate for women athletes.
Hi, my name is Kurt David, author of the best-selling book and TV show From Glory Days, which features Hall of Fame, All-Star, and World Champion former professional athletes about their life after pro sports. As a father of two daughters, I can tell you I'm a big advocate for women's sports. And one of the things that I notice, especially in the media, is that less than 4% of coverage happens for women's sports. In other words, less than 4% of sports coverage covers women's sports. Let that sink in for a moment. In other words, 96% of sports coverage covers men's sports over women's sports. So definitely it's not a level playing field. And one of the things I want to do today as part of my advocacy for women's sports is talk about how to increase your voice in the media and become an advocate for women's sports. There's 4 different ways I'm going to share today. The first way is find and encourage male allies in the media. As we well know, it's very heavy male oriented when it comes to sports media, and finding one of those allies that will help promote your story and what the women's sports activity is very important. So as you think about your own communities, as you think about your own media communities, think about those male figures in that sports world that might be an advocate for what you want to accomplish. That's the very first thing. The second thing is tell a lesser known or backstory about the women's sport. As an example, one of the interviews that I did in our 4 seasons of the TV show was interview a woman by the name of Manon Rhéaume, who was the first woman to play in the NHL. She played down in Tampa Bay. The backstory is that Manon, when she was 5 years old, talked about how her older brothers in Montreal actually needed somebody in the net when they were playing hockey. So when she was 5, they stuck her in the net to start learning how to be a goalie, and her brothers would throw shots at her. Now, both her brothers ended up playing in the NHL, and Manon, because of her experience early on, started playing the NHL as well when she became an adult. So again, that's a backstory that most people may not know, was that she was in the net at 5 years old because of her 2 older brothers, and it set her up to be a goalie in an NHL, the first woman to ever play in the NHL as a result. So again, that backstory, lesser known story that people might be interested in. The third item is to be consistent with the coverage. In other words, in season, out of season. A lot of times we just think about in-season coverage of sports, whether it be women's sports or men's sports, but there's an out of season. And so finding those stories, those out of season stories or compelling stories or human interest stories that are involved with women's sports will be important. And that'll help be an advocate as well to get more of that sports coverage. The third and fourth and final thing, actually the fourth and final thing, is tell a story, tell a real story. As an example, we had an Olympic gold medal gymnast on our TV show by the name of Tatiana Gutsu. Tatiana talked about how when she was 10 years old, she already knew she was going to be an Olympic athlete. She basically, in Russia, when she was growing up in Ukraine area there, the Russians had already groomed her to be an Olympic athlete at 10 years old. That was the track that she was on. She talked about that story. She talked about how grueling it was and how it was difficult to be away from her family, but also how rewarding it was as a result of what became ultimately of her medals in the Olympics for being a great gymnast as a result. But again, more to that story, telling that story. So there's 4 different ways to become an advocate in the media for women's sports. We got to move that percentage up from 4%. That's just an ungodly amount of only 4% of sports media is covering women's sports. So we got to improve that. And again, the 4 ways are find and encourage male allies, tell a lesser known story or backstory, get consistent coverage in season as well as out of season, and tell a story, tell a deep story about somebody that's involved as a result. Again, I'm Kurt David, and let's keep advocating for women's sports.
What does it mean to be an advocate? An advocate for what? What are you advocating for? Yourself, your sport, your community, the world? What does it mean to you? There's no right or wrong way to advocate for what you believe in, for what means something to you. Get in touch with what means the most important things to you as you compete and train in your sport. Advocate for accessibility, resources, time, your teammates. Let's think about that. What is advocacy? And what are we advocating for? What moves our heart? What fuels our passion? How do we take action towards change in that way? Does action have to be verbal? If not, what other ways can we advocate for what we believe in? Is it what we do? Or is it what we don't do? What does it mean to stand up for what we believe in? What does it mean to advocate? Let's find a way to make meaning for that for us. And let's advocate in a way that is powerful and leaves us empowered.